Good evening. My name is Zaya Tombre, and I am a part of the Donaldson Hermitage Neighborhood Association. And I am here today with Councilmember Kevin Rhoten of District 14. Thank you so much for being here with us, Councilmember Rhoten.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be here, and I appreciate Donaldson Hermitage Neighborhood Association for having me to discuss the future of Hermitage. So thank you.
Absolutely. So tonight, what we're actually going to talk about is some of the development that is happening around Central Pike and Dodson Chapel. I know that a couple of residents were a little bit concerned that there wasn't much input from the community, and I know we're going to address that. But to start out, can you tell us a little bit more about what is the vision for that area?
Right. So probably when I first started, long before I started on the council, but when I got on council, one of the first things that I found out was that the planning department has a vision for the Dodson Chapel Central Pike intersection corridor right there, which is like of a community town center. A lot of people who live in the Donaldson Hermitage area know that many years ago, when it was all country out here, those crossroads right there was the main center of the Hermitage area. That was where the post office used to be, and obviously there used to be a grocery store there, and it was just a little country crossroad. But ever since the library and the police precinct and the park have been located in that area, the planning department really feels like that crossroad and those roads should be an area where everyone comes to gather. And obviously they've done that with the library and the police precinct and the park. The question for me is, what type of development do we want along Dodson Chapel and Central Pike to make people want to get out and walk and do things like that in the area? So that's really what we're looking at, is the type of development that is going to go along Dodson Chapel and Central Pike. Obviously, I think everyone knows that there is a lot of development up Dodson Chapel. With the church being hit by the tornado and that large part of land is now going to be open, the church hasn't decided who to sell to yet, or if they're going to rebuild. So if they sell to someone, we need to make sure that that's done properly. And then down Central Pike, there are a lot of different things going on down through there. And then we can start discussing those if you'd like. Those are I think some of the bigger plans down Central Pike. And so we can start discussing that.
Okay.
And then move.
Perfect.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you hit the church and daycare over there. I think a lot of people were wondering, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
So can you talk through a little bit of maybe some of the phases of what you envision for the development over there?
Sure. So the community center plan was put in place by the planning department many years ago. One of the council members, it was probably prior to me, I think it was about 20 years ago, someone put a mixed use right there on Central Pike, right across from the police precinct. I didn't zone that, but that's where you have the new condos that have popped up right across from the police precinct. And that was a mixed use development, and they decided to put condos there. I talked to the developer the other day, and they say that those have already all pretty much sold out. And they are wanting to put a new mixed-use development right next to that. Now, the mixed-use development they want to put next to that is a little bit larger. It's a pie-shaped piece of property there. The main things that I want going forward in development along this corridor is for there to be retail for people who live along Dodson Chapel or Central Pike to be able to walk to. So currently right now, it was funded many years ago, but they're about to start on a sidewalk from Riverwood all the way down Dodson Chapel to the park area and down to Central Pike and Dodson Chapel all the way through there. So what we're trying to do is make it to where if anything is built, that it has some type of retail component so that people can walk and do whatever it is they need to do, whether it's shop or eat or just hang out and get some ice cream somewhere. That's what we're really trying to do in that central corridor where the park and the library is. So the mixed use development that is going in, or that is proposed to go in next to the condos, is going to have a retail component. And I know one thing that they've already talked to several restaurant owners and they're wanting to put a restaurant that is a two-story type restaurant in one of the buildings, so where you would go in on the main floor, but there would be a patio type structure on the second floor. And so that is kind of what one developer is wanting to do there, and that's what's been proposed. We had a public meeting. We actually, on that actual development, we've had 2 public meetings, and then we had a planning meeting about that. They're going to leave. A lot of folks in the neighborhood next to it were concerned about how close it might be to their neighborhood. And so what we did was we made sure that the back, which kind of goes up a slope, all those trees will remain, so that there'll be kind of a buffer between those people in that neighborhood and the mixed use development. So that mixed use development is going down Central Pike. I know I'm going to just keep talking. I'm just talking. I could talk forever on this, but
that's okay. Well, let me pause you for a quick second, because I know
sure.
some of our residents had concern. You mentioned that there were some meetings, but in this time of COVID, maybe people want to, be more involved. And I also think some of the residents argued that, because the park and the community center is a community for everyone. And I know like postcards go out to a certain number of feet. How do you ensure that more people in our neighborhood and Hermitage in general can be involved in that decision-making process?
Yeah, sure. So normally whenever I've normally always put on my Facebook page. For some reason this time, I don't know why I didn't, because it's something people might be interested in. I didn't think it's really not that big of a development, but I guess people consider if it's there in front of the library, it might be big to them. So there's a requirement that the community plan, which was changed, was sent out more than just to the few around there. It should have hit a large swath around the entire area there, which is much bigger than if it was just a rezoning, because the community plan is redoing all of Central Pike and a lot of Dodson Chapel, which basically just makes sure that what goes in there will be of a certain type and not just continue. Right now it's a neighborhood maintenance, which means nothing can ever change through there, which obviously it can't always stay exactly the same. Like on Dodson Chapel, there's nothing there, but it's right across from a rock quarry. The types of buildings that you would put there, or the types of structures you would put there, I don't think would be in the single family home right across the street from that. So it's kind of, what kind of development do you want through there? And the main issue for me really is whatever we put in there, the infrastructure that we put through there has to match what we're going to have on that street. And I've been screaming at the mayor's office for years now about Central Pike and how there's no sidewalks on Central Pike. There's no bike lanes on Central Pike. I ride my bike all the time on Central Pike, and you always worry about someone coming up behind you and hitting you when you're on Central Pike. And so these are the things that I think some folks will notice. The new townhouses that are going in right now, you'll notice the road is wide and they're putting in an extra turning lane. We need more than just an extra turning lane up and down through there. We need the road to at least have a turning lane all the way and have bike lanes. That's my concern, is that whatever we get developed through there, that the infrastructure matches. I've had some people call me and they don't want anything up and down Central Pike. I don't really understand. We can't not do, if a developer comes along, we have to develop. The question is it good development? Because I grew up here, I'm going to live here probably the rest of my life, so I don't want bad development in that area. So I live just a quarter mile down the road from there, so I understand everyone's concerns. So
right, and that makes a ton of sense. So I know you mentioned, especially around the park, you'd love for the community to be able to walk to retail, which is wonderful. And you mentioned a coffee shop and an ice cream shop. And as a new mom, I think that's wonderful. So how do we ensure that those good developments are in the neighborhood instead of a vape shop, for instance?
That is the one thing that I'm trying my best to do that keeps Hermitage a nice place to live. So whenever someone does a rezoning or whenever it's going to come to council, I have the ability to work with the developer to make sure that they keep certain types of businesses out of the retail establishments. And so I have been working with the developer on the Central Pike side to make sure that they're putting in nice projects there that match. And I think the issue is the type of building that they build, and that you make it to where, while it's not so unaffordable that no one can live there, but that it's affordable enough to where it keeps nice things going in there. And it's kind of what we did with Magnolia Farms. We made sure that Magnolia Farms, while they wanted something that was affordable for everyone in the area, we wanted to make sure that it was nice to where when you come back 20 to 25 years from now, it still looks nice. And so that's how, if you go to Magnolia Farms, people will notice that it's all brick. You know, while the sidewalks are all required, you have green space throughout that community. And you're doing things that actually make the neighborhood nice. You have an HOA that requires everything to be nice through there. And so these are the type of things you can do when you develop and when you zone things through council to keep things nice. And that's the same thing I'm trying to do with the developments that come through. I can't stop development as a councilman, because that's just, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to keep Hermitage country like it was when I was a little boy for the net. You just can't do that because things are growing so much. But what you can do is make sure that the development that comes in is what we would want to see. Now, everyone's not going to agree that, you know, some people are going to say, well, I don't want a 2-story or a 3-story structure. And some people are going to say, no, we need more of that. What I'm trying to do is, the land values along the roads have reached a level to where you have major developers coming in and they want to do major projects. Whatever project comes in, the neighborhood needs to agree that it's nice and it's what we want to see. I know a lot of folks are concerned about the traffic. Traffic is my number one issue on the Dodson Chapel and the Central Pike corridor through there. I was looking at the numbers today, and Central Pike in the last few years and Dodson Chapel have both reached a peak to where they're going to have to start looking at widening or at least improving the road. As you are well aware, the roads, they kind of look like they were built in the 1940s and they've never done anything to them. And Central Pike has been on the capital improvement budget to be improved, but it's never been funded since 1974.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's almost 50 years now that it's been on the capital improvement budget for Metro, but it's never been improved. Something really weird that I think people who are watching need to know about Central Pike is that Central Pike, while it's a state road, somewhere way back when, and I don't even know when this happened, from Old Hickory Boulevard out to the county line, the state is in charge of widening that portion of the road. And that has already been funded through the Improve Act that they passed a couple of years ago. Metro is in charge of widening from Old Hickory Boulevard to Lebanon Road on Central Pike. So I think it makes things very difficult for us, because I think everyone knows that of all the intersections that bother me in the Hermitage area, it's the Central Pike Old Hickory Boulevard intersection when you're coming from Lebanon Road, where it just gets down to one lane and it backs all the way up around underneath the interstate, and everyone's sitting there waiting for the light to turn green. And everybody knows that intersection is terrible and it needs to be improved. All I can do as the councilman is to continue harping to the mayor's office and Public Works and hoping that the state is going to help us a little bit too to get that intersection fixed through there. So believe me, I think about it every day. Every time I see the mayor of Public Works, that's the first thing out of my mouth is that intersection needs to be fixed. So
Got it. So Central Pike, it's the plan to get it widened, but it's not really up to you to do it.
I'm one of 40 council members, but ultimately every capital improvement project that comes down the pike has to be initiated by the mayor's office. We can try to amend the capital improvement budget, but when you do that, you're going to need 21 council members to go along with you. And obviously they have their own pet projects. So it really helps if the mayor's office is behind what you're trying to do. I think planning and Public Works now both see the level of development that is starting to take place in the Hermitage area, especially along Central Pike and Dotson Chapel. And they're realizing that improvements, especially to that intersection, I think everybody sees that intersection and it looks like an intersection from 50 years ago. And it really needs to be improved. And I'm hoping that they are starting to look at that corridor now as really needing infrastructure improvements. So.
Right, right. That makes a ton of sense. So when we speak about development, a lot of the concerns that come up are environmental, whether that's the removing of trees or water runoff. Can you speak a little bit about like what the plan is to kind of make sure that that's not negatively impacting our environment?
Right, and then so the one issue that I get a lot of times is that people don't want the large trees cut down that are in an area because they feel like it changes the area. I understand. One of the things that's a problem is when someone buys property to develop it, they want to develop the property to the largest extent possible. Councilwoman Angie Henderson, she has been working very hard, and I cannot applaud her enough for what she's been doing with the streets project and with environmental issues, especially trees, on requiring developers when they come in to not only plant just one or two trees, but to come back and actually replace, with larger trees around properties, to make sure that within a few years you'll notice the trees coming back that were taken down. So obviously all trees can't continue forever. We have a lot of trees in the area that we need to have arborists come out and take a look at because they're just in bad shape. They're just old trees that need to either be fixed up, spruced, or they need something to be done to them. But we have some that are in good shape, and you would hope that developers, when you're working with them, will take your recommendations on keeping the trees that are necessary. You bringing up the trees made me think of one thing that with development that kind of, you think to yourself, okay, what's more important? The sidewalk along Central Pike. So when that first got initiated, a group who wasn't even from the area made a call to Metro and told us that, or not me actually, to Public Works, that they did not want the trees along Dotson Chapel taken down. Well, you can't have a sidewalk down the side of Dotson Chapel unless you take some of the trees down, because there's just a bunch of trees down the side of Dotson Chapel. If you've ever driven down Dotson Chapel at dusk, and people are walking along the road, it's a very dangerous situation, and no one should have to be walking in the middle of road on Dotson Chapel. And so we need a sidewalk along there. Well, I was never told until well after they decided we're going to redo the whole thing because we want to save 4 or 5 trees through there, that had occurred. So we've been waiting now for 3 or 4 years for a sidewalk so they could go back and redesign a plan along Dotson Chapel for the sidewalk. So my question is to you, or just to everybody watching, how quickly do you want a sidewalk? And for me, very quickly, because it's a safety issue. But then you have people out there thinking we need to save the trees quicker than we need a sidewalk. Well, if you don't have a sidewalk, I think that should be the first priority, and then plant trees around the sidewalk. Some folks might want to keep old trees more than have a sidewalk. I know that I'm harping on this issue, but it was just something that for me, it was like, okay, we really need a sidewalk up and down Dotson Chapel. So anyway, hopefully that will be, the project's supposed to start here in the next few months. And so hopefully they've got it worked out. We won't have to take out too many trees, but I think most of everybody watching, if you're there at the pizza place and you try to walk up Dotson Chapel, the sidewalk that's there, it runs right into a huge tree. Well, obviously that huge tree has to be taken out at some point so you can do the sidewalk. So, but they'll replant around it and hopefully try to avoid most of the big trees up and down through there. So.
Right. Got it. That makes a ton of sense. And what I'm hearing from you is that, you kind of have to and want to get a lot of community input, which is something that I really respect about, like, you want that voice. So would you consider like informing the neighborhood association so that we can get word out to our members? And what upcoming meetings are there so that community members can give you more input?
Right. So right now, excuse me, there are the meetings for council, both of the bills for the Dotson Chapel and the Central Pike developments that were put forward in front of the Planning Commission. They have not come to council yet. So I will not have any meetings, public meetings, until they come to council. So after they come to council, I will set up a meeting for the community to be able to come in and give their input on the what's going in along there. There's also, I think this is kind of moving off of that little corridor, something that needs to be discussed. There's a large white house on Lebanon Pike. It's the Smith House, and it's right across from the Donaldson Corporate Center. There has been, we've had several public meetings with Stanford States about that development. They have filed again for 55 homes around the old house, and I know a lot of folks in Stanford Estates don't want that. We'll be having another meeting about that development, or whether or not it should even move forward within the next few weeks. We'll be setting up that meeting. There's also, I'm trying to think, there's so many. I know one was just filed, and I've not even had a chance to look. There's so many being filed. There was one just filed on Dodson Chapel for, I think it's a 40 condo type project on right across from the animal hospital there, where a couple of those houses are. Someone has a contract to purchase that and develop that right there. I haven't even had a chance to look at that development to see what they want to do. I know that that will be coming up. That's not even gone to Planning Commission yet. So that'll be a meeting that will be coming up. And then obviously the church, whenever they make a decision on who they're going to sell to, that'll be a meeting that'll be coming up soon, that folks need to actually, we want the entrance coming from Old Hickory Boulevard to be really nice coming in to the Hermitage area. So I'm hoping that folks can come give their input on what they want to see along that corridor coming into the library and the police precinct area. So those are just some meetings that are coming up within the next months that they're going to see really soon. So
okay, so a lot of development coming. Can you commit to informing DHNA so that we can get the word out for you?
sure, I usually talk to Jordan and Tim all the time. So if I have not informed them, I think they'll tell you I'm pretty good about having meetings when it comes. Unfortunately, during COVID, I've had 3 public meetings about the Dodson Chapel and the Central Pike development. They were all virtual, and we had like 4 people show up on the virtual meetings, but I saw the cards that went out. There were hundreds and hundreds of cards that went out, and just, I don't know if people were not concerned that it wasn't close to them, but I heard from a couple of people after they heard about it that they were concerned, but not people that lived right in that local area. So I think Donaldson Hermitage Neighborhood Association will do a good job of making sure people know what's going on that live in the area. So thank you about that.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, how does all of this fit into Nashville Next?
So Nashville Next is, I have a problem with Nashville Next, and I'll just tell you what my problem is. I went back and looked at the Hermitage portion of Nashville Next, and when Nashville Next was being developed, there was hardly anyone from Hermitage, the 37076 zip code, on any of the committees that were a portion of Nashville Next. And so what has happened is Donaldson was well represented. The corridor through Lebanon Pike, and a lot of those individuals were well represented on committees for the Nashville Next development. We had no one speaking for Hermitage, so all of those plans got put out there, but there was no voices from Hermitage. So the folks that did Nashville Next planning, how do they know what the folks in Hermitage actually want in the area? And so I think what you've seen is over the last 20 to 30 years, just a lot of apartments being put in because a lot of it was just zoned that way because developers came in and said, there's no real plan for this area. We'll just put apartments here. And so along Old Hickory Boulevard, along Central Pike, you see a lot of apartments being put up. The ones on Dodson Chapel, everyone says, Kevin, where did those apartments come from? Those were approved back in 2006, a long, long time ago. And it was right before the recession. And so just now they are coming to fruition because the economy is coming back. So I actually had nothing to do with those apartments that are going in on Dodson Chapel right now, and everybody asked me about them. So I just try to tell them, look, I wouldn't have let that large of a dense development go right there on Dodson Chapel. It's happened. And so we're going to have to make the best of it. That's why we really need to work to get infrastructure from the mayor's office to make sure that things will be improved through there. So
Got
that's where
it.
the red lights on Bell Road and Dodson Chapel and the two lights in front of Hoggett Ford and Riverwood Drive came from, because they actually didn't have any plans for those, and so we had to get those put in. So hopefully that's helping a little bit through there. So.
Got it. Well, that is good to know about Nashville Next. I did not realize that, and I'm sure some other folks didn't as well. So thank you for sharing that. Back to the development around Central Pike and Dodson Chapel. Did we hit everything that is being developed? I know we talked about retail. Is there anything else?
The one on the Dodson Chapel, so the one on Central Pike is the one next to the condos. There's the one behind the old grocery store, behind the construction place now. There's 3 houses there that are owned by the same gentleman that owns the office building on Central Pike, the medical office building. And he's wanting to do an office building there, but I explained to them that we didn't need just another office building. We needed, if you're going to do it, make it with retail on the bottom where the people could actually walk and do something there. So I am trying to work with them. Obviously, it's his property. He has the right to try to develop there. We just need to make sure that if he does develop commercial space there, that it's commercial space that the community can use. Like we discussed, if you want a restaurant, if you want to shop, or if you want some ice cream, or if you want to take your kid to do something down there, we want that to be able to be used like that. So you could be at the park, the library, walk over and get something. Make sure that the infrastructure, and that's the biggest thing, is the infrastructure is there to where you can walk between these buildings and the park and the library without feeling like you're going to get run over, or that, everybody knows this, that you really want to feel safe when you're walking in an area, and make sure that the speed limits are kept down, and make sure that it just feels like a community, a place where you want to go. And so that's what we're really trying to do. And if we can't, I've told everyone, if we can't make it feel that way, I don't want to do the project. So I think everyone's starting to understand that's what I'm trying to do through there. One other thing that I didn't really mention, and I think a lot of people probably know this, but I want to make sure everyone knows, down by the railroad tracks, there's that empty lot that has the barriers in front of that property there. It's right at the railroad tracks in Brandow Road. That's about 11 acre, 12 acre piece of land right there. It sits right next to the railroad tracks, but it sits almost perfectly equidistant between the Donaldson train stop and the Hermitage train stop. It's about 2.5 miles between each one. That rail line right there is where the Music City Star runs. And so planning has an ultimate goal of having a train stop there. And so the RTA and the MTA, as things develop along Central Pike, and the more that all that area grows, that is a location that they're looking at for a train stop and hopefully retail in that area. So I think, as you know, and everyone in the area knows, a good portion beside it was just taken out by the tornado as well. And so whenever that happens, large places that used to be there are not there anymore. And it's developers look at that and say, okay, what are we going to do there? And then Metro Planning is looking at it, and the RTA and the MTA is looking at it and saying, what's going to develop around where a train stop can be in the future. And so that's kind of where all this is going. And I really want everybody to understand that there is a goal for there to be a train stop right there at Brandow and where the Music City Star runs right there one day once things are developed. So we just need to make sure when we develop this, that it's something that we're proud of in 20 years, 30 years. I'm not looking at just today. I'm looking at, 20, 30 years down the road. You don't want a neighborhood, or you don't want buildings sitting there that you're not proud that you helped build. So that's what we're trying to do right now. So.
Got it. Yeah, it's best to be forward thinking. Speaking of forward thinking, I know that Hermitage has a lot of development other than what we talked about. Can you share a little bit more about some of the other development that is happening?
Sure. So other than Dodson Chapel and Central Pike, I think a lot of folks may not know it. I know people that live in Hermitage Hills, or if you live in the reserve at Stone Hall, everyone knows about it. There is a neighborhood called Park Haven, which is if the road beside Arby's, Hickory Hill, if you drive down that road all the way to the back, there is a 500 home, 55 and over gated community, and they have just now started building the houses in the back of Hermitage Hills. So that was 300 acres, almost 300 acres when they started. They gave us 150 acres for a metro park, which will be connected to the Ravenwood Park and the Lytle Farm. So we'll end up with a 1,000-acre park back there. Excuse me. They've also added, if you ever drive back there, they've added a new Greenway trailhead, which will connect to the Stones River Greenway. So this lets everyone in Hermitage Hills connect to the Stones River Greenway without having to get out on Lebanon Road now. And so that's a really wonderful thing for everybody in that neighborhood. The thing that made this possible was that the developer agreed to do 55 and over, and it's a gated community, so there's not near as much traffic as it would be if it was, young folks. It's not apartments, it's not townhomes. It's going to be a nice gated senior community. So hopefully that's the best, the least impact we could have on the community as far as traffic coming through Hermitage Hills. So we really we're glad that we could get that. The next thing going on right now is Magnolia Farms. Obviously, is about halfway done. Is about halfway completed. I don't know if you're familiar with Magnolia Farms down Hoggett Ford and back in that area. So they're doing a nice job back there. They have told me that the land across Hoggett Ford, they would like to continue building more of Magnolia Farms there. And so I know they're talking to people back there about adding a few more homes next to Magnolia Farms. So that's something that's going on there. There, obviously, the apartments that y'all see on Dodson Chapel are continuing to be done. In Donaldson, across the river, there is a development at the corner of Stewart's Ferry Pike and I-40, and that was at one point going to be just apartments. Now we've got them to add some retail, so there'll be some retail right there at Stewart's Ferry Pike and I-40. It's right next to the old CNA Insurance building. I think everybody the old Art Institute building. So that's what's being developed through there. So there's several more, and I can't think of them all right now, but there's probably 8 or 9 developments right now that are either in the planning process or have been filed. So there'll be a lot of meetings and a lot of opportunities to folks to give their voice on what they want to see in the Donaldson Hermitage community coming over the next few years. So.
Awesome.
Excuse me.
Well, that is wonderful. I won't keep you any longer, but our last question is there anything else that you want to share with your constituents or the folks in DHNA?
No, only that I hope that they're making it through COVID okay. I know for a lot of them, believe me, if you have any children, I feel your pain. My 5-year-old started school this year, and we're doing it virtually. And a kindergartner in virtual school is not a good thing. That's all I can say. So we're working through that. I know they're supposed to start again right after fall break, going back to school. So hopefully all the parents out there who are having a hard time mixing their work and their home life and trying to do it all virtually. My thoughts are with you because I'm in the same boat. So it's kind of tough right now. So, and that's another issue for folks. You want to have all these meetings, but doing it virtually when your children are home or you're not leaving the house every day, it's really tough. So hopefully we can be back at the police precinct or back down at the library having meetings real soon. So that's what I hope. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Rhoten, for being with us tonight. And for our viewers at home, please tune in to our next forum. It'll be on September 24th. It'll be a forum with all 4 school board candidates. So tune in. That is at 6 p.m. and we hope to see you there. That's Facebook Live. Again, thank you so much and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you.